Hello and welcome to day 2 of Design Dekko Musings, a 2-day digital conclave during which we will discuss some of the pressing issues in the design industry. And we will try to understand what designer feels about this subject as they explore it from various vantage points. I'm Supri Sudhakaran, your host for the evening. And for those who are joining us for the first time, let me tell you a bit about us, Design Dekko. Design Dekko is an initiative by one of India's most trusted and respected conglomerates, the Godrej Group. Started in 2019 as a platform for architecture and design professionals, students, and enthusiasts, Design Dekko today is a thriving community of over 24,000 members. Thank you for making us this strong. The foremost objective of this platform is to inspire you, build a network, engage meaningfully, and encourage collaboration with peers and brands in the space. But before we start the evening, here are some mandatory information and announcement. If there is one thing that we have learned during the pandemic, it is that we are heavily relying on technology. And you never know when it will play the devil with absolutely no reason whatsoever. So if there are any technical glitches, please bear with us. If for some reasons you get disconnected or the screen freezes, do rejoin us using the same link which you would have received in your mailbox. This was sent to you when you registered. If you still face an issue, you can go back, register again, and you will get a live link. In addition to that, we will also be streaming this live on our social media platforms and on our website, designdekko.com. If you find any interesting nuggets, and if you would like to share your views or comments on the session, please use the hashtag DesignDekkoMusings and tag us at @DesignDekko. This is uniform across platforms. The itinerary of the day is already up on the website. But if you are here on day 2 and couldn't attend day 1, here is a glimpse of all the speakers who have curated this show for you. Can we have the video, please? We will begin with the keynotes, which will be followed by 2 power panels today. If you wish to ask a question, use the Q&A tab on the bottom of the screen to submit your questions. You can also upvote a question which is raised by another attendee. You can see in the Q&A box. And in case you feel the question is really good, do upvote and do make the most out of it. The chat section is also open for you to share your keynote, for your comments. The keynote address today is on the theme, Who Moved My Park? For today's keynote, we have 2 panelists and 2 keynote speakers who will be coming here. I beg your pardon. We have 2 keynote speakers who are coming here. The first and foremost being Ankur Choksi of Studio Lotus. And the second will be Jado. Ankur will be the first speaker. But before Ankur comes in, let me just tell you a bit about the subject, which is Who Moved My Park? Now, during the pandemic, we all realized that we were sitting at home and there was hardly any space which can be called as public space anymore. Around 5 to 10 years back, we all started the fight to have more public spaces and realized the importance of it. Unfortunately, we are still focusing on smart cities and vertical growth of cities is what experts are saying. And there is very less space which can be called truly a public space. As we wait for Ankur Choksi to join us, let me introduce you and tell you a bit about Ankur Choksi. Ankur Choksi is principal at Design Lotus, a New Delhi-based multidisciplinary design practice he co-founded with Amrish Arora and Siddharth Talwar in 2002. He leads the integrated architecture and interior design initiatives for the practice. A more keen focus is paid to hospitality and residential design. Ankur is also an active proponent of quality design education and advocates the principle of conscious design pan-India through the academic engagement as well as design conclaves like this. This session will be powered by Godrej Construction and the trees. Before we head on to the panel discussion and the keynotes, let me once again share with you the introduction of Design Dekko. And we have Anubhav who has already joined us. He will be chairing one of the sessions today. Hello, Anubhav.
Hi, how are you?
We are absolutely good. We are just waiting for Ankur to join us. He was facing a slight technical glitch at his end. So he's just going to log in now and he will be delivering the keynote. Meanwhile, let me see. I can see one hand which has been put up from the audience. Okay. Fantastic. So Anubhav, before Ankur joins in and we have this time, let me just take a bit of your time as well, because once you get onto the panel, we will hardly get time to chat about this. The keynote is on the theme, the importance of public spaces. What is your comment on importance of it?
Well, I think public spaces is something that are absolutely critical to any city. And I find that in India, while we have public space, the quality of public spaces is fairly deficient. And that has to do with lots of factors, safety, security, things like that. And, one of the things that I noticed, I'd been living overseas for quite some years. And when I moved back, one of the key things that I was looking for when I wanted to rent a place in Mumbai is how much sidewalk there is in that neighborhood. And you'd be surprised that I wasn't able to find that many neighborhoods in Bombay with sidewalks, let alone parks, let alone plazas, public spaces, so on and so forth, right? I think we did that better in the old days. Somewhere in the middle, it kind of got lost. And now, because there's a big deficiency in public space and the quality of public space, there's a demand for it. So a lot of the developers, a lot of the new developments are now putting a big focus on public space and the quality of public space, as it were. And this about our developments. One that's close to home, the trees. We were very, very keen of not only focusing on the buildings but the spaces between buildings. The one of the first things we did was we took away the motor car, we put all the cars underground, we put it all outside the development, made it walkable. Once you're able to do that, you're able to build sidewalks, parks, spaces like that for people to enjoy. And then you can program those spaces with retail and other vibrant uses.
I'll come back to you after the live and the keynote, and we'll have a longer discussion on this again on Design Deco. And with
Sure.
that, let me welcome Ankur Choksi, who has joined us. Ankur, can you hear us? Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Ankur. How are you?
Hi, Supri.
Okay, so Ankur, I'll start with the mandatory introductions, which are necessary. Ankur Choksi is principal at Design Studio Looters, a New Delhi-based multidisciplinary design practice he co-founded with Amrish Arora and Siddharth Talwar in 2002. He leads the integrated architecture and interior design initiative of the practice with a focus on hospitality and residential design. Ankur is also an active proponent of quality design education and advocates the principle of conscious design pan-India through academic engagement and design conclaves alike, such as this. This session is powered by Godrej Construction and the Trees. Welcome Ankur, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And I'm just going to share my screen. I just want to keep supporting what I'm talking about with a few images. And as you would all know, firstly, I would like to put it out there that the topic is, like Anubhav spoke about it's a huge area of work, and it's overwhelming in a way for me to take this conversation forward. So, sorry, just a minute. You can see my screen, Supreet? Sorry,
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So basically, I'm going to, so today's topic is Who Moved My Park? And I'm going to kind of pick up a lot of thoughts and ideas that we've come across, which inspires us and a lot of the work that's getting done in this area around the world. And I want to kind of start with a slightly larger, broader perspective, which actually also informs a lot of our practice, design practice, and we try and bring that in our everyday kind of design assignments in a very small way. But so I'm going to zoom out quite a lot and then try and zoom in and talk about the pragmatic challenges and what we are trying in our own way. So, I'll start with this idea of the park. And basically, I've picked up a few thoughts on what could this idea of park mean to people, and what could it mean to us as a society, as a group of designers, as citizens. And I'm also using a framework of questions which were thrown at me to address this keynote from the team who's organizing it, and I'm using those as well. And one of the things that I want to start the conversation with is this: the park, in a way, signifies this interdependence of the society, of us as communities living together. And the idea of, I want to talk a little bit about the idea of inclusivity and, what it does to resilience, and especially in the times that we are living in with the COVID hitting us. It's really important. So I'll pick up two. So firstly, I mean, I just wanted to speak about, how it's personally kind of hit me, this immediate connect with the local communities and the way they've supported us during the COVID times, when the larger supply chains kind of broke down, and the local communities really became your immediate way of dealing with the situation. And that really called out the sense of interdependence, and the connections that we live with in urban environments. And I'm going to keep pulling on examples. So I've picked up this little story from David Engerwright, who works on placemaking, and he's a master at it, and he does some amazing work. But this is a little experiment that he did, and which I thought was quite interesting to share, and it kind of left an impression on me. So he walked around the cities of US and around the globe. He had this throne as an object created, and he was experimenting with how people, kind of respond to it. And people were loving it, taking photographs with it everywhere he went. And one of the stories he spoke about was his experience in a old, or not old, rather kind of isolated spot in Los Angeles, where he set up this throne. And in the afternoon, the police came to him and asked him, "What are you doing?" And he explained that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to set this throne up, and I'm going to wait for people to come and interact. And the police told him that basically this is going to be a tricky thing, because as evening comes in, you will have a lot of people, homeless people, coming this way, and you'll probably get mugged of your expensive cameras and all the hardware and everything else that you're carrying. And he kind of stuck around. He didn't take it in that spirit, and he said, "I'm going to give it a shot." He stayed there, and slowly, as the evening kind of emerged, a lot of different kind of people, a lot of homeless people started coming to that parking lot. And he says that the whole night was just so much fun, in terms of people really wanted to just get photographed on that throne, and nobody was interested in actually mugging him. And he really speaks about how he connected and gave a sense of place, a sense of home to all these guys with his little transformative kind of installation that he'd done. And I mean, a lot of his examples are very simple gestures that can convert a public experience into something very meaningful and soulful. I'll move forward to, so these are some images of the people who came and took pictures there. And then I'm using a larger framework from the work that Sharif Abdullah has been writing about, where he refers to this idea of a place for, a common alignment, and across the community. And this idea of, what the park stands for is actually a place where we can connect with each other, create a sense of trust, create a common kind of value that we can all pursue. And of course, he also talks about inclusivity and this idea of connection. So, I mean, in a way, one big thought is that, so there's a lot of work being done on this factor of trust and the happiness factors of cities, and the public spaces make a huge impact there. So a public space actually allows for you to experience friendliness if it's welcoming and safe, and somewhere it also connects different ethnicities, which in a country like ours is, and globally it's super important at the times in the times that we are living in. And then I'll move to this larger idea that he speaks about of the shared and common space that allows us to kind of look at how to, like how can we create a new society, and it actually allows for a platform. And in a way, that's what the opportunity is. I feel that this notion of the common space allows for, where traditionally in all old cities, like this is Prague and most of the European cities, even our traditional old cities, always had this sense of center, a place where you would have, say, a local temple or a mosque, a large square where markets would get created. And that gave a sense of anchoring to the community. And that's the whole idea, that somewhere we as designers have an opportunity to create a dialogue with public spaces which looks at equality at a community level, at an economical level, ecologically across the globe, and even at a spiritual level. So I'm just going to talk about, for us, in our own way, we've constantly looked at respecting all stakeholders on our projects. So in our small way, that's what we try and do when we do projects, the idea of building with local communities, working with local materials, and engaging local economies to that degree in the construction process that we work with. And really looking at profits not for the sake of profits, but also what it does to the larger good of the community and larger good of the people that we are working with, and the impact that it's going to leave. And of course, we practice something called conscious design, and which is an idea where we are constantly trying to build our awareness, growing our awareness about how things impact people and how everything that we do is interconnected, and it's kind of impacting people in different ways. And he really kind of pushes this factor of, the common or the park being like a platform to really experiment and look at how we can build a new future, and the idea of how we practice democracy. And that's an idea that's kind of shared across many people, and we can see it back home, even in, say, this is the protest happening at India Gate for the anti-CA protests happening, or even in Mumbai at the Azad Maidan, which is a ground for protests and people to come together and really participate in decision making and democracy. So that's a base conversation that kind of I wanted to build on, and then I'm going to move to more specific questions, like a group of questions around what is the role of public spaces, and how are we missing out on that when we are looking at smart cities. And I think the key thing to look at is just the attitude with which urbanization is being looked at, and the value systems that we are kind of making considerations with. So even if you don't look at larger gestures and things that are expressions of large public experiences, what Anubhav spoke about in his last conversation, even little things like missing footpaths, and there's just no way to navigate our cities. So like the modern cities that we are creating don't have room for people to walk. I mean, you can actually not use these roads as pedestrians without getting killed. There's just no planning for it, no rooms left for it. And these are such critical learnings that we need to pick up from the work that's getting done globally. There are a lot of learnings from the Western countries which have built cities and failed with them, and work done by a lot of the, like Charles Montgomery's experiments with a happy city. And I'm going to pick up a few instances that he speaks about. Like he's talking about this modern approach of, streets which are completely cold, and the modern expression of the streets which is not allowing for any connect at the street level, and the edges are becoming completely non-porous. And they did a series of experiments of how people experience and what is the amount of time people spend on these streets versus streets of this nature, which are very porous and which create that social connect, and which have that sense of warmth. uh, so the idea of happiness, uh, social connections, uh, is very important, and it's very kind of apparent in the way we look at urban spaces and the interaction available at the urban scale. And a little example of another experiment that he did, where they had been running these polls on, would you raise the minimum wage of people who work through the night in New York? And through the streets of New York, there were polling sessions going on, and most of the collective vote was that hell no. I mean, we are all, kind of working so hard, and why should they get any advantage? And I think they created an environment of trust. They created an environment of ease in a public space, and reran the poll with a fair number of people, and the polls kind of completely inversed. So this idea of what the space does to you, this what kind of emotions it creates, and what it allows us to live with as a society, where we treat each other in that sense with equality, with respect, with love, is very important factor that governs the kind of public spaces that one could create. Another question about this idea of vertical growth, and if that was the only model, and whether we should look at other options. And definitely, I just wanted to talk about one very prominent project that I think everybody is familiar with in a way, is the High Line in New York, and what it did for the Eastern community. And so this High Line was built as the public park over this old freight train tracks. And somewhere what happened in the planning of the High Line is very interesting. And collectively, I think as a group of architects, policymakers, people who are engaged in the project, they consistently went through every aspect of the planning, all the way down to even the new developments that would happen around the High Line. So there was a very rigorous kind of engagement with developers and creating guidelines for developers, where the new developments were actually kind of pushed away from the High Line, creating a sense of breathing space around it. So there was a vertical corridor, vertical kind of built that happened, but without impacting the sense of space that the High Line was aspiring to create for the neighborhood. And it, of course, creates an amazing space for many neighborhoods, where it's a easy link to multiple neighborhoods, and people really end up spending a lot of time and connecting with each other in this space. So it is an important idea, and the idea of densifying cities and vertically kind of looking at density needs to be balanced with urban developments and pockets, green pockets and public spaces, populating the space and giving opportunities for people to kind of connect with nature and find that space to breathe. Another another thing that I think I would like to address is this situation of COVID and the condition that our cities and our urban spaces go through. So one of the question was, what are the, like I've spoken about a lot of examples, and there are many international examples of the High Lines there, the Central Park is there, the Millennium Park at Chicago, and of course the old European cities. I mean, they naturally have been created with lots of green breathing pockets and large plazas and public spaces interspersed. And one of our one of our kind of, we can't undermine this great legacy that we have in Mumbai city, which is the Marine Drive. And what it does, even today for us, it really is that place where people find their own private pockets, they interact, people from all, all kinds of neighborhoods across the city are invited to kind of participate and be part of this and enjoy the ocean views and the fresh air and the breeze on this walkway. And in a way, I think the challenge is, so that's what happened, I think, when the lockdown opened in Mumbai, and just the sheer density was not something that was acceptable for what we are dealing with right now. But this is, I think, the challenge we have. And I think what we need to really look at is creating more spaces, more opportunities for people to step out. And I mean, that's India Gate at Delhi, which also offers a similar kind of breather for people. And we should just be looking at creating a lot, many more of them. The challenge is going to stay in terms of density, but we need to kind of approach it keeping that in mind. And that's really something that we as designers need to work towards, and that's something that excites us to contribute to. So yeah, just to sum it up, there is a huge kind of importance to public spaces, and there are various things that can be done to empower people, to empower communities, to contribute and build public spaces. And I think some of the things that as designers we need to really understand and start focusing on is, how do you safeguard against commercial interest? Because building a mall is always something that contests a great public space. And as society and as a community, we need to create interventions which will help people deal with the fear of unwanted, welcome people. And that always comes up for public spaces. Like people are always wary of safety because of the kind of people who would engage with it. And how do you create structures that allow for surveillance and control, but don't take away the accessibility or the or allow for inclusivity. And of course, at the larger scale, when we are talking about the administration and the governance and maintenance, there are concerns of investments and logistics of going through the governance bodies and how designers can work with them. And so, I mean, all of these are very large ideas. And what I wanted to speak a little bit about is, how people, how we as designers and how citizens can do something. And increasingly, I think we are becoming aware that it is about understanding the constraints and understanding the limitations of the systems and working with it and engaging all the stakeholders and influencing them to create a shift in their attitude and their thinking. And little interventions, one step at a time. That's what's going to create impact. And I think that's an opportunity for all designers as well as even citizens to try and contribute and create a shift by building up their awareness. So I'm sharing these two projects, which to our mind are just some experiments we've done, and in a way they address some different ways of looking at how we can push the boundaries of the public and the private spaces, and uh, actually use other uh, other ways in which public spaces could be created in the city. So the first example is a recent project that we've done for the Odisha government. It's basically a building for the agricultural directorate where we proposed to open up the ground floor level as a seamless kind of experience to the city and the community they are serving, which is the farmers. So the entire ground floor of the office building opens up to the public, and then we've used it as a canvas to bring in craft and layer it and activate it with multiple activities which would engage the farmers as well as the local uh, public to come in. There are amphitheaters for performances, there are huts where the local produce can be brought in and shared with the residents. There are special workshop areas and engagement areas for the farmers themselves who can interact and connect with the people who are running this office. And a series of interventions across the ground level, working with various kinds of crafts and populating the landscape with uh, elements of interest, allowing for different pockets and different spaces to get created. So also as a, this was also a platform for the government to be a patron to craft. So it almost engaged some 300 craftsmen to come in and kind of work directly on the surfaces of this building in different forms. We built stone screens and direct large murals expressed on the soft stone that was the laterite stone that was used at the ground floor level. And the building itself has a set of wearing spaces and courtyards to rest during the warm months. And the other project that I picked up is again what we did with GPL, GPL Studio, and Anubhav was leading this with us, where the brief was to actually create a gateway to, or rather a seamless connect to a gated community and give back some part of the experience to the city and connect with the urban fabric in Vikhroli, where people would come into this zone and kind of participate, and that would be an interface between the mixed use and the residential complexes which are created as part of this development. So we took this old legacy buildings, which are part of the old factories and industrial township of Godrej in Vikhroli, and kind of articulated them. And in terms of master planning, worked around creating spaces and pockets of interaction for people to gather. And that's a set of two buildings which forms the gateway to the courtyard, within which sits a little, we converted a old boiler a structure into a cafeteria, which now Social is running. And there's continuous development happening in this precinct area, where we are developing it further and making it into a plaza which can be activated with events and F&B experiences and public experiences. These are some of the development images, and that's how the transformation happened. So that's as it is alive with before, just after setup. And yeah, that's the plaza when it kind of comes alive with people kind of connecting from the city and coming together. to have on various occasions as set up by GPL and associated partners. Yeah, so thank you. These were two projects that I thought directly kind of spoke about our attempt at contributing to the public spaces and our thoughts on how, as architects and designers, we can make an impact in a vast kind of area of or a vast gap that we have in our urban planning and in our cities especially, that needs a huge amount of attention. So thank you for this.
Thank you, Ankur. It was really insightful, and especially the thing that you mentioned, that it's now upon us to look forward how we can change the public spaces. Following this, we will have a second keynote. Gerdo Aquino. I'll give you a brief introduction about him. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us live, so he has sent us a video which we will be playing. So I'll start with the introduction for him, even though he is not here, but he should be introduced is what we feel. So once again, thank you, Ankur. You brought in a lot of interesting perspective to this. And moving on to Gerdo.
Thank you.
Gerdo Aquino is co-CEO of SWA, an award-winning global practice of landscape architecture, urban design, and planning. Based in Los Angeles, Gerdo has served on numerous national boards, lectured at universities and other institutions around the world. He has also co-authored the award-winning book, Landscape Infrastructure, Case Studies by SWA. He wanted to be here in person. However, there were some exigencies and he had to share the pre-recorded version for us. So let me please ask my team to play the version. And this session is powered by Godrej Construction and Trees.
Hello, my name is Gerdo Aquino, and I am the co-CEO of SWA, and very delighted to participate in the Design Dekko Musings. As our cities densify and issues of mobility and housing, air quality become issues, I think we need more open space. I think open space is the answer. And it's not that we've forgotten about creating these quality open spaces in our cities. It's more about the fact that we have reimagined what these open spaces can be. Yes, large, open, green spaces with shade trees are wonderful. And oftentimes they are large and you can do many things. But reimagining open spaces in our cities means that perhaps we need a smaller, more compact footprint. Maybe an open space could be as small as half a hectare or a quarter of a hectare or an eighth of a hectare. Within these smaller spaces, you can look at a more of a distribution strategy where all of these smaller spaces work together to create access for everyone. You can have an open space literally within 5 meters or 10 meters of where you live. And that's key for creating open spaces within dense urban areas. We need all of it, the large, the medium, the small, and even the micro. Again, collectively, all of these spaces allow us to connect with nature, with each other, and more importantly, creates the kind of environment that I think we all desire to live in. Vertical growth of urban spaces is one solution. I also think that you can reimagine what vertical growth is, that like a tree, it can be vertical, but then it could move horizontally, that you can create layers of open space within the city, ground level, 10 stories above, 20 stories above. You can create horizontal connections to mountains, to other natural areas that people want to use for recreation or gathering or activities. It's not about a course correction. I don't think we're doing anything wrong. I think we just have to be a little bit more specific about what we're doing. For example, if we create vertical growth, are we also thinking about the environment? Are we improving air quality as we go up? Are we improving mobility as we go up? I think if we could address the issues related to vertical growth and think about the environment and the benefits for people and for nature, then I think we're heading in the right direction. But if we're not addressing those pressing issues and you're just purely looking at vertical growth, concrete slabs, steel, outdoor terraces, it's not enough. I think for this next century, it'll be critical for us to embrace the resources that we currently have so that we can have a sustainable future and live within these really wonderful, great cities we have around the world. You know, I feel to be an activist is to be many things. I think to be a design activist means that a person is very passionate about shaping the landscape, shaping the environment in which we live and play and work, and to have a voice. I think socially we all interact in these open spaces that we create, whether it's a sidewalk or a small park or a large park. I think we all want to believe that design can matter, that design can be the catalyst of change for the better, to improve quality of life. You can be active in talking about design in forums, in speaking about it. You can be a landscape architect, an architect, and engage in design directly in terms of shaping spaces. But I do think we need more voices in design, and not just voices that begin in college or graduate school. I'm talking about voices that are thinking about design at an early age. When you're 10 years old, do you know what design is? Can design be a part of education at a very young age? In the same way math and the languages, English is being taught, I think we can start to maybe integrate a design agenda in education in early development. And I think that would be key. And I think design, will go a long way over the next century in terms of helping benefit our cities to think more deeply about the issues that we face. The creation of public spaces in our cities, they don't come easy. A lot of cities around the world are strapped with very meager budgets, no capital to make any improvements. Communities want open spaces, but we're all left with the question of who will pay for it and where is the land. I think the land is right in front of us. It's not the kind of land that you might see very easily. In my mind, the land that cities have available to them are the leftover spaces, the railway right-of-ways, the excessive street right-of-ways, leftover triangular spaces from freeway interchanges, the spaces in and around power lines, excessive building setbacks within the right-of-way. I think if cities could identify these kind of leftover spaces throughout the city, usually associated with infrastructure, and reclaim them and create a system of linked green open spaces, that would be a great starting point. And it's already happening in cities around the world. So then the next question is, once you've identified these spaces, how do you pay for them? And there are a lot of mechanisms today for mayors and city council to think about a strategy to finance and pay for these open spaces to benefit their communities. And that's a forum that is happening all around the world, whether it's incentivized taxes, or it's self-imposed taxes, or if it's money tied to environmental strategies to improve air quality, or it's redoing infrastructure while at the same time including open space as a part of the solution. There are creative ways that these public spaces could be paid for, and it takes all of us to make these public spaces happen because they are important. And again, as our cities densify, we have less and less of these opportunities to identify and create and implement open spaces. There are many great examples where public and private ownership of land creates wonderful open spaces for people and for nature. And I use both public and private because it's that partnership that oftentimes creates pretty amazing spaces where it's not just an open space, just a simple park, but there are other components to it. Maybe there's a mixed use development associated with the open space, or maybe there's a residential component associated with the open space, or maybe there's a metro station associated with the open space. When you take the interests of private sector with the public sector, I think you end up with a very dynamic result in the open space design. And at our firm, at SWA, we've had the honor of working on some very dynamic public-private developments throughout the U.S. And around the world. And these projects are often are set within very complex environments. Some of the examples you can see on our website. I could probably note maybe 3 of them and on the top of my head. Number 1 would be our project in New York, recent project from SWA Balsley, and it's called Hunters Point South. It's a dynamic waterfront that deals with issues of resiliency, but also open space, access to open space, recreation, and that being the public component. The private component is the land immediately adjacent to the waterfront that will benefit directly with that association through the creation of housing, restaurants, mixed use, office. That's a really wonderful example. Another example would be the Culver Steps and Main Plaza in Culver City, California, here in Los Angeles. And that's an example where the city identified an area within their core, within the center of their city, where they wanted to create their main plaza. It didn't really exist until this project was realized. And it wasn't just an open plaza. It was creative in the sense that it also included the integration of an existing historic hotel on one side and a really wonderful mixed-use project on the other corner with yet another kind of Hollywood studio on the other end. And when you have these different programs kind of surrounding that open space, you create really dynamic movement of people and activity and activation. It's become a real focus for the city of Culver City and its residents and visitors. Really wonderful project. Also an SWA project. I would say the third example of a good or a great private-public partnership would be our project in Houston, Texas. It's called the Buffalo Bayou, out of our SWA Houston office. And that project has been in the planning and design and implementation phases for over 15, 20 years. And that project looked at an existing waterway that ran through the downtown area of Houston. It was a neglected waterway. It was not a place people would visit, and it would always be eroded very seriously during the major floods. And it was underneath freeways, and so it had a lot going against it. But the city and the private sector saw opportunity there. And with SWA Houston office, reimagined what that area could be. They turned what was a neglected waterway into the most exciting part of downtown Houston, where the waterway is now an amenity. There are regional bike trails there. There are weekday and weekend activities. A lot of housing has kind of sprouted up along the edges. Walkways and bridges that connect one side to the other. I think it's become one of the top 10 destinations and things to do in Houston. So there are a lot of really great benefits of that kind of partnership. And so you look at those three: New York with the waterfront project, Los Angeles with the Plaza project, and then you got Houston with kind of a natural systems project. Those are three very wonderful SWA examples, each done by a different office of SWA. The New York project done by our New York office, the Culver Steps project in Los Angeles by our Los Angeles office, and the Buffalo Bayou in Houston by our Houston office. And that's really an example of not only diversity of our work, but how us as a firm share a similar design ethos when it comes to addressing the public realm and the benefits of a really great designed public realm for the communities that are linked directly to them.
And that concludes the keynote for the day. The theme was Who Moved My Park? From here, we begin the power panels. And I'm really excited to take you into the first power panel of the day, which is Break in the Code. We have an interesting lineup of speakers. This session is powered by Godrej Interior and Godrej Blocks and Architectural Fittings and System. Every year, the industry draws a list of architecture and design trends and expects them to remain in vogue. We say design is a fluid field, and it keeps evolving more and more every year, and new trends emerge. During this session, the panelists will debate and discuss a few trends that they think are mere fads, and other which they feel may outlive the projection and emerge as long-lasting trends. Before I begin to introduce the panel, let me first invite the chair of the session, Anubhav Gupta. Anubhav Gupta is founder at GPL Design Studios, Godrej Properties, and chair of this session, as I mentioned. He's a global award-winning design thinker, strategist, and innovator whose work straddles both the business and design worlds across the industry and assets. Anubhav founded GPL Design Studio at Godrej, a unique multidisciplinary innovation engine with a mandate for design, product development, brand building, and creation of unique customer experiences. He currently serves as Executive Vice President at Godrej Properties, where he leads as the business head for the redevelopment of Godrej's landholding in Vikhroli. Additionally, He also serves as the company's Chief CSR and Sustainability Officer. Welcome, Anubhav.
Thanks, Supreet.
And our first panelist who will be joining Anubhav is Sushant Jay Amita Verma. He's founding partner at Rat Lab. If I pronounce it correct, you correct me if I'm wrong. Sushant is a design entrepreneur, architect, computational designer, and educationer. Currently leading Rat Lab Studio, which is a short form for Research in Architecture and Technology. He investigates at the intersection of design, art, and technology through architecture, interior design, and art installation. He's recipient of M.A.K. Schindler's Award from Vienna, Los Angeles, and finalist for AIA Emerging Leaders Fellowship from Chicago. His work is widely published and exhibited in London, Los Angeles, New York, Tokyo, San Francisco, New Delhi, Mumbai, among other places. Welcome, Sushant. Thank you for joining us for the panel.
Thank you, Supreet. Glad to be here and looking forward to the discussions.
Next up on the panel is Rodrigo Brenner, who is co-founder of Verve Design. Rodrigo Brenner is Forbes Under 30 list recipient. He's part of the list, and a TEDx speaker. He's co-founder of internationally multi-awarded Verve Design Studio. He graduated in PUCPR from Brazil and has been building a global reputation for high-quality products coupled with generous doses of intelligence, humor, sustainability, and social responsibility, with projects which are spanning across 15 countries. He, along with his partner, is youngest to receive the Best of the Best Red Dot Product Design Award and to be part of the jury of IF Design Awards. Welcome, Rodrigo.
Hello, good morning. Here in Brazil, it's morning right now. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure and an honor to be among you. And looking forward to see you in person, maybe in India, maybe in Brazil. It's amazing to be here. I hope to learn a lot and share a lot with you guys. Thank you.
Next up is Abdul Sattar Wafai, co-founder and chief architect Sipal Wafai Architecture, an award-winning architecture and design firm based in Italy. Architecture is not like any other measure. It's a product of culture and civilization, argues him. The firm creates spaces driven by emotions and desire that provoke a dialogue through light values, experience of space, and atmosphere. Welcome, Abdul. If you could switch on your camera as well.
Thank you so much for this great and generous invitation. And thanks to all the attendees. I'm really happy and it's a great pleasure to meet you all. Really looking forward to this interesting discussion about the future and architecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul. And completing the panel, we are bringing back our keynote speaker, Ankush Choksi from Studio Lotus. From here on, I leave the session to Anubhav. Anubhav, the session is all yours.
Thanks, Supreet. Good evening and a very warm welcome to our guests and our panelists who seem to be logged in from all across the world. So thank you, Design Dekko, for having us. And very happy to try and moderate this session with my distinguished colleagues. Very interesting topic, gentlemen, that we have here. And this topic of debate is about trends. And, I was initially slightly, I'd say, uncomfortable talking about trends. And I guess I speak for all designers. So I wanted to lay it out there that I speak not only for myself and, possibly for all of you, that trends are a tricky thing. I don't necessarily think designers chase after trends. Of course, trends tend to be those that are either adopted, by the masses or by media and, those that might be popular or fashionable or in vogue. I think designers are very clever in that in trying to do the right thing, they also make things trendy so that they are adopted by the masses. So I hope that I'm speaking for all of us here. And we will talk a little bit about trends, but I'd like to frame the discussion more about ways of thinking. And these ways of thinking find themselves becoming trendy in today's day. So, I bucketed this conversation into three parts, if you may. The first part, is there's a lot of trends or thinking about, going back to the past, this idea of revival, bringing back the artisans, craft, and so on and so forth. There is also a fair amount of, focus these days on using cutting edge technology, new technology in design, in architecture, in the production of buildings, spaces, things like that. And of course, triggered by the COVID pandemic, all of us are thinking about health, wellness, and sustainability. One of the big silver linings is that, since we all got shut down, the skies are bluer, the birds are chirping, and we hope that we can keep it that way. So let's dive right into this discussion. I leave it to you guys to talk about trends and how you see them shaping the world. And please feel free to reference your work in how you think about this. And we'll come to the final conclusion about this topic, I guess, in the end. So I'm going to begin with Rodrigo, if I may. I want to talk about this idea of, bringing back the artisan, this idea of craft, this idea of upcycling, adaptive reuse. We're seeing a lot of that happen in the design world, and not only the design world. I mean, even in other industries that have much to do with design, people are looking at the past. So I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about your practice, how you see this, and if it is a trend, if you are using it as a way of thinking, which would become trendy because it's the right thing to do. So Rodrigo, all yours.
It's an amazing question. One thing that we do at FIRF, we are an industrial design studio in Curitiba that is in south of Brazil. And in the last 10 years, we've been designing from furniture to medical solutions to gadgets to crazy products that we don't know how to call them. But one thing for us that's really important is the key word to understand what we do and why we do, and it's inclusion. For us, inclusion in all the ways is like a radical inclusion. When we talk about inclusion, it's we never do something exclusive. I don't know in India, but especially in Brazil, it's when we talk about design, a lot of people think it's something that it's totally exclusive and exclusive design, or something that people used to sell more. And usually here in Brazil, design is related to luxury. Okay, but for us as human beings, as in a spiritual way of thinking and both professional way of thinking as well, it's not very clever to talk about exclusivity when we want to embrace the world and we want to embrace other opportunities. So just to tell you a little bit what we think, we design as we are writing a poem. We think that we are some kind of industrial poets. We don't know how to write really well. That's why we design products. But so just like a poet, he's like obsessed with giving the meaning, a lot of meaning, and giving a lot of emotions, but without using unnecessary things. Okay. So you don't usually see a good poet writing a lot to tell you something deep. Usually the deepest poems are really short. That's what we try to do. And when we talk about industrial design, so we design from products to startups to medium-sized business to very huge companies such as Natuzzi in Italy. National Geographic is a really good client of us. And also we've been designing a few things for the United Nations. Me and my business partner, Mauricio, we are instructors of the UNIDO. UNIDO is the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. It's a special organization inside the United Nations that we are trying to see the future, see all the bad things that are happening, that are the bad is being mass produced. So we cannot be shy to fight the bad things that are being mass produced. So we truly believe that we should mass produce good. And if we could mass produce good, that's amazing. And returning to your question, when we talk about craft, I believe in India, you guys have amazing craft as well. It's like traditional techniques, traditional materials that have been used for centuries. And talking again about inclusion, when we learn about a new material, when we create a new material, we created with an amazing company that we've been collaborating here in Brazil. It's a biofabric made out of leaves. So it's it kind of looks like leather, but it's carbon neutral. So it's an amazing material. Also, we've been designing with mycelium, but we see all these techniques, all these materials as ingredients, and we love to cook. So one thing that we do, we never exclude, again, talking about exclusivity, we never exclude something. We're always looking to the future, especially when we are designing for very high-tech companies and international companies, but we never forget the past. We try to bring the best of the past and give a different reinterpretation, right? To make a step forward. So what we do, we look at the crafts, we look at traditional materials, we use leather, we use porcelain, we use glass, we use a lot of different materials and a lot of crazy materials as well. But what we try to do is never to exclude. And for us, this is a big, I don't know, just like you said, I don't feel very comfortable to talk about what is a trend or what is not a trend, but we truly believe that inclusion is the key, is not only including different social aspects, but we've been designing with a lot of amazing projects for handicapped people, but also including different techniques, including different, we take a very traditional artisan with a very traditional craft, and we create a dialogue between this person and a scientist that is in a lab creating like a very high-tech material, and we create these connections. So if there is, in my opinion, if there is a big trend that we see in the future and we want to see in the future, I think the two key words is inclusion, and the other one is connection. We should, in our opinion, is always try to include, always try to connect as much as you can, and never exclude, never exclude. And with these ingredients, we can create an amazing dish, and it will be delicious. That's what we try to do.
Fantastic, fantastic. That's a great start, Rodrigo. Want to jump to Ankur, and you know I've worked with your practice, Ankur, and again this idea of bringing back the craft. You shared one of your projects earlier. So Rodrigo talked about inclusion, talked about connection. You know, how do you see the inspiration for your work, and obviously in context of this discussion about trends?
Yeah, so like you said, I think we all have to frame ourselves around trends and look at what it means for us. And I think the way we look at it is trends usually try and allow us to be fresh and be relevant when we look at it from that lens, that we are trying to apply the things that we have access to, and how does it respond to, you know, the needs of our times, like the way we live, and designing for the way we live and the way we say work and have leisure. So for us, Rodrigo spoke about, I think in India, the craft brings in this whole layer of advantage in terms of as storytellers. I mean, like you spoke about being a poet, we kind of believe that there's always a story to be told, in the manner in which we put together something. And there's a larger story. There are various stories at different levels, even in the construction process and the overall approach to the project. So in that sense, that's how we look at craft. So of course, it looks at the aspect of inclusivity and working with uh, people around us from the local communities for everything that we do. So we are constantly trying to juxtapose and create contrast. So for example, we've been working for a lot of very high-end fashion design stores and doing brand narratives for their retail environments. And we've chosen to, work with local street craft from around Delhi and NCR and kind of weave that into the construction process. So it's a dichotomy of a sort, but work that they produce actually helps sell garments and products which are completely exclusive to them, or they're kind of not accessible to them, but it still kind of creates a interesting co-relationship and puts a story out there. So that's how we look at it. So craft from everything that happens on urban level in our streets to when we work in, say, areas of Rajasthan and Jaipur, which are very, very strong in terms of the hand skills, then working with the local masons and the stone carvers and actually getting something up, which, so we've used a lot of local stonework and hospitality environments in those areas. And that's really helped create a very bespoke, a completely personalized and kind of very strong narrative based space for hospitality brands. And that also helps create a huge, allows them to pull in a huge premium. So that's how we see the relevance of working with this medium.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Ankur. So interesting, from inclusion, connection to storytelling, also across different levels. Let's move our focus a little bit to, technology, the technology of our times, cutting edge technology. I have myself as a student, when I was in the US, been exposed to some of this. There's a lot of coding that is being used in design and architecture, whether it's to generate surfaces, complex surfaces. I do remember, trying my hand at a software called CATIA back in the day, which was developed for the French aerospace, but Frank Gehry uses it quite a bit. So I'm gonna invite Sushant now. He's obviously, you've been at the AA. You've also worked with Zaha. I know in your own practice, you use some of these cutting edge technologies for the design process. And we are seeing, for a while, this has been, so as to speak, trending.
Right.
It'd be great to get an insight from you, Sushant, on how you think about this.
Right. So interestingly, what we're trying to do as a studio is not to kind of follow trends, but try to do things which become trendy. And it has happened somehow. I mean, it wasn't a subconscious, effort, but so when we started the studio, I mean, it was in London, 2012. It's been a while, and the journey has been, starting from UK. I moved to US and then came back to India. My partner works from London right now, and we've been just moving countries and stuff. Right from the beginning, we had this whole idea, of how to bring in more research into technology, which actually started to us taking up the trends at that time, 2012, 13, which was computational design, which is very popularly and known as parametric design now by the general public, because computational design is something which is slightly more technical. People can't relate to that much. But what we have seen in all of these years is that there is a growing trend of accepting technologies and people wanting the kind of outputs that these technologies are able to give us and provide us, which is quite interesting. At the same time, of course, we try to keep our focus on the process and not purely on the output. But overall, I would say, thinking, if you have to think about anything new, I mean, that's something which is what creativity is. But if we try to do something new, that is what innovation is. And that's pretty much what we've been trying to do. Try to do something innovative in every project, be it a large scale project like a cricket stadium we are working on. So we are using design technologies in a manner which allows structural optimization, geometry rationalization, getting the right kind of functional aspects into the stadium design and making it look interesting as well, which is a part of the program. To versus, let's say, a temple we are working on in South India, where we're trying to use principles of numerology and Vastu and try to infuse them using design technologies uh, to create something more meaningful. And it can go down to even small scale furniture and installations, which we keep on doing. So obviously our work ranges from something as small as a furniture or a product to something as large as a stadium or a large commercial complex. But how we see things changing in the last 10 years, I would say, is the role of technology and how technology is able to change the design profession and the methodology towards designing. Because that's something which was missing until, let's say, 2000s or mid 90s. Very interestingly, you mentioned about Katia, which was a software which was borrowed from the aerospace industry by an architect, Frank Gehry, who made it popular. Working at Zaha, I know we used to work on softwares like Maya, for example, which is not a very popular architectural software. It's an animation tool, but it was fit to create design innovation in that particular practice. So at the end, what we're trying to do is trying to create new technologies. For technology, by technology, I actually mean a new methodology or a process of designing. So whether we work on a commercial project or a building facade or a furniture, our whole agenda and the motive is to how do we make it innovative. Uh, and it kind of becomes trend by itself sometimes it doesn't. Of course, the acceptance level changes, but in a country like India, what we've seen significantly is in the last few years people have started to become much more less resistant to change, I would say. There is still resistance, but things are changing very quickly. And I think with the pandemic, we've realized that when we started our studio, we were more like a cloud-based operative, basically. Like we used to, both partners are in different countries, and the team is in other countries as well. It was something absolutely new at that time, and so that was innovative for us. But now with the new normal, we see that that's the need of the hour. We have to live in that kind of a collaborative culture. uh, Overall, I would say one, as a designer, one doesn't really chase trends. One tries to keep innovating, be more creative, which sort of becomes trend or becomes your style, and then you start to develop that further. But we are always in a work in progress. But I think right now the pace at which the technology is changing is much faster than what we've seen in the last 100 years, and that is really changing the profession, which I see as a positive impact.
No, thanks, Sushant. That's quite insightful. I now have sold my soul to the devil and crossed over to the client side. So, in real estate, we are finding that ours is one of those industries that has been the most resistant to any new technology. Someone pointed out to me that the real paradigm shift innovation happened last when they invented the elevator, and that was ages ago, right? So I
Right.
think there is a tremendous resistance, but I do see it changing, as you put it. And that's not only on the design side, as in using these sophisticated softwares, which earlier, it was quite difficult to conceive of in your head. And this is something that helps you visualize better, but also on the production side of this, right? And that brings me to my next
Right.
question, to Abdul, who has a very, very interesting background. And I'm really curious because, in his background, it states that he is an architect designer as well as an automobile designer. Now, I'm really envious about that because that's one of the things that in my head got left behind in my explorations as a student. So I'm really keen to get your perspective, Abdul, on this. And specifically, how you marry these two disciplines. And, maybe you want to talk about this, maybe you don't want to talk about this, but, to us in real estate, we always look at the automobile industry as a great way of using technology for production, and perfecting something and putting it in the assembly line and producing something. Somehow, architecture has not gone that way, or some designers feel it shouldn't go that way. So how do you see trends shaping our industry from your background and experience?
Thank you so much. It's really an interesting question, and it is. I think it's more speculative than how it looks. Since now we are in Torino, it is in Italy. It is an industrial city, so the automotive industry shaped the city on all the levels, like urban level, and also like the housing itself. Like the plan of the houses, 90% of the houses are the same. They have also a certain criteria in design, like a super small kitchen. Even the living room is smaller than the bedroom, because it is, these houses are made for workers. Anyhow, Torino now changed a lot. It is not an industrial city as it used to be. But in order to answer your question, I think it's important to connect some points together, so we can explain the motives and the direction of design based on the reality comprehension. At the end, we have a reality and we should face it. We have a client with his needs and with his budget, and also a lot of elements. At the end, like, architecture is a result of social aspects and behaviors, cultural aspects and traditions, and political directions in a certain moment of the life timeline. And the most important thing is the economy system, and it is the capitalism as a generator of revenues and means of production. So now, if we are speaking like how as you said, the production line, the assembly, and how these things are going to like the prefabrication, let's say, how it can be inserted into architecture. So I think the prefabricated in our days now can be understood in two different ways. So first one, if prefabricated means a mass production of a full building, let me say a house, which is like the residential projects are the main topic in architecture. And this house is going to be repeated several times, which will reduce the production cost, obviously, and it is the method of capitalism. I think this method is not going to work anymore, in my opinion, because people now are much more educated about architecture, more than any time before. And thanks to social media, which provides the proper marketing methods and tools for architecture, where people are able to see different design directions and then start to compare. Before social media, the person knowledge about architecture is confined with his city or where he commutes. With social media, people start to create a taste and opinions about architecture, and the pre-designed houses, I think, are not going to sell as it used to be, because now the tastes, how can I say, like, are more diverse, since people are able to see how the housing is evolving, also especially with this pandemic, where I think the future is going to be really totally different. There will be the back to the normal, the one we know, is not going to be even with the vaccine, because also the economy changed, like the smart working, the remote working. Like Microsoft, they said it is permanently working from home. Like you can then relocate. You want to live in Greece, go, and you keep your position. anyhow, automotive design didn't suffer before social media from this aspect because people are seeing cars from all the brands every day in the streets. So one can choose what suits his, her taste. But if the design is made of hundreds of or thousands of prefabricated element of the whole that is going to be arranged and arrayed based on a design system using grasshopper or any parametric design method, then we are, I think, on the right direction. If we want to implement this method of like production in architecture, because in that case we can tailor and tweak the system based on the client needs or taste, because it's a parametric thing. And also it is something really important in architecture, and maybe is the urban design, the urban aspect of the project. Like with the prefabricated, we killed the urban aspect. The public spaces now are poor because the buildings basically are a sort of copy paste with some tweaks on the facade, but the plans and the spatial arrangement is the same. So the client of today is not the same client of 30 years back. Today, as I mentioned, the client is much more educated about architecture and aware more about his real needs or where he wants to spend his money. So I think the future or the trends of the housing or in architecture, which is like mainly housing, is going to be more of green spaces inside, focus more on the balconies. Like in the pandemic here in Italy, in the lockdown, 2 months of lockdown. So without balcony, life would be impossible. Before that, we used not to use the balcony, like we use it for smoking, but not like a space that we interact, maybe speak with the neighbor also. So all of these things are now evolving, and from business point of view and architecture point of view, the response can be like when the client or the business side doesn't accept like a big balconies, they want more spaces for the inside. Now like everybody must work towards the change. So going back to the effect of automotive design on me as an architect and automotive designer, I learned like from automotive more about design than about manufacturing. Like I was focusing on design itself. So basically, I learned the coherency in the design language of an object, because cars are an object and they follow the product design. There is a coherency, there is design language, how the glass, for example, can be attached to the stainless steel frame on the phones, on the smartphones. So automotive design focus a lot about design language, because at the end, car is a car on 4 wheels. So the design innovation in most cases is related to surface treatment. For example, the transition between two surfaces or between two materials, and how it's possible to repeat it in another part of the car, let me say, to connect the design language. Also, it is more focused on design theme and its importance. I think we apply this method of the design theme in our design works following really a simple rule, which is design a super strong surface or element and surround it with a super simple context. So the main designed element, the main focus, the strongest part pops out. Like, for example, in automotive, I give you an example, like the Lamborghini Miura, for example. Like it has a really super strong curvy shoulder, and every surface around that is really muted, is really simple. So this is, if I want to explain the effect of automotive on how I think about architecture and how I think about the trend, I think also like the cars that are live up to now are the cars that are more simple and focus on a clear design theme. So
no, thank you, Abdul.
I hope I could respond to your question. It is really tricky, and speculative.
I agree with you. I think one of the key things that you brought up in this conversation about trends is there's often a clash. I see it as a real estate professional that in the business circles in real estate, this idea of prefab and smaller balconies and all of these things are trending, but they're not necessarily trending in the customer space, right? For various reasons. So I think we need to be quite careful in making sure that these two sides are talking to each other. And I'm quite heartened
Absolutely,
to hear from
absolutely.
you. Yeah, and I'm quite heartened to hear from you that both as an automotive designer as well as an architect, you see the common language for you has been about design, has been about, say, simplicity, has been about, the things that make those two things talk to each other. So really insightful. Thank you, Abdul. We are missing one of our panelists, Massimiliano, and I was actually going to talk to him a little bit about, in this current scenario of COVID and, as we look to the future, there is a lot being talked about sustainability. A lot of designers and architects are looking at nature for inspiration. The words like biophilia get thrown around, which then become trendy, as it were. So this is an open question to any of you who want to take it. Of course, sustainability, we've been, as designers, been shouting about it from rooftops for, I don't know, decades. No one necessarily has been listening. I mean, hell, if it's got the label of biophilia, so be it. So anyone who wants to take that on, be great to talk about it.
I think I can add about this topic like a couple of sentences. At the end, we need really to wait how the economy system and the capitalism and the means of productions are going to evolve, And I think if this, it's hard to predict the future, like nobody is able to know how much is going to last, and are we going to be more adaptive to the new normal and how the new normal could evolve. I think there are going to be industries that are going to disappear or become less important, like automotive actually, because why to buy a car if you are at home all the time? And then also how some countries are responding to the pandemic in the cities. Instead of like total lockdown, they lock down an areas of the city. And I think this is like a seed of a small communities, let me say, since they are going to, cutting the cities in order to control the pandemic. I think the future, carries a lot to us. And I think the key element now, the thing that we are usually rant a lot as an architects, like really we need more private and semi-private green areas in the houses or in the cortile here in Italy, like between buildings, there is a space for parkings and so on. I think it is really important now to return to the architect's point of view, and because actually it is going now to sell more, now a bigger balcony, more green spaces outside in the balcony, it's going to sell you more than a bigger services in the house, so but it is anyhow, from the business point of view, it's hard to take a decision because we don't know how the life is going to continue with this pandemic, so this is my insight about this future and sustainability topic.
Thanks, Abdul. Anyone else wants to comment on the sustainability or the biophilia ideas going around?
Yeah, so I think talking about sustainability and trends, both these subjects are very interesting because I think sustainability has become a trend, even for people who may not be consciously sustainable or understanding the need for being sustainable, as a building, as a way of life or whatever. It has become a trend, which is a very good thing actually, in a way, because it has led to a subconscious, effort or positive effort towards caring for the environment and nature, be it through providing better spaces, well-lit, houses, or however, there are various strategies that one can use. What I find very interesting in today's age and date is that we have the technologies available to us which can allow us to measure sustainability aspect or footprints in a very quantifiable manner, which is very important for us as designers to be able to take objective decisions about sustainability. So sustainability is not anymore just about being green or being conscious about waste, but now we can actually get into the actual metrics of sustainability, or how we are using the building. So that has made the designers very conscious of how they're designing, because we have a kind of a responsibility to be sustainable, uh, and not just in terms of environmentally, but from a client's perspective, you would see financial sustainability of a project. Are you getting the right kind of returns, for example? And I think designers, architects now play a key role in bringing about and helping create that sustainable and a better space. And that comes through innovation, which is where I find it very interesting that we have the technologies. For example, computational tools. Abdul mentioned about Grasshopper. I'm glad somebody brought that up, because that's one of the trending tools of parametric design. And I have friends from the automobile industry who are using that and trying to translate that into architecture as well. We have worked with fashion designers where we use similar tools. And I think the beauty of new technologies allowing you to collaborate and innovate is quite interesting. And if we are able to become more sustainable, if we are able to care for the planet, if we are able to build more consciously, I think it's a great thing that it's a trend now, so it's a
No,
good trend to have.
I fully relate to what you're saying. One of my roles at Godrej is also to look at sustainability, and I have been trying to make it trendy. So in doing so, I always say that in India, when you go out and buy a car, the first question you ask, what is the average mileage it'll give me per gallon? I can't
Correct.
believe, and a car you probably have for, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years. A home or a space is something you'll have for, God knows, 50 years, 70 years, right? Why are we
Yeah.
not asking the same question of our buildings? And I think a lot of this, like you said, is about using these tools that we have and showing people, how it's done. And I think that part of the equation possibly needs to be addressed. With that, because we should be conscious of time. What I want to end with is in either a couple of words or a sentence, what each of you would want to see as becoming trendy, let's say for some time to come. So what would you like to see, become trendy?
That's a
Whoever
tricky
wants to go
question.
first.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I truly believe that sustainability, we should not forget, just like my intelligent colleagues just said, sustainability, it's always three things. This is really important. The true balance of sustainability is three things. We should think about the environment, of course, and that's what most of the people think about. Second thing, it must be social. We must think about who will use it, who will produce it, and who will create it. The impact on the lives of the people that are involved with the project. And the third thing, it's the economy. We should think about how the economy always. We should not forget this when we're talking about sustainability. So for me, this simple, beautiful word that is sustainability, for me, it would be amazing. That would be a trend. And because from our point of view, and with different projects in Europe, in Brazil, in the Caribbean, what we think, it's people usually don't buy products that are way more expensive just because it is sustainable. But what we try to do and what we think to do is not use sustainability just like in a shallow way. But what we need to do, we have to go deep, really deep, and make sustainability sexy. sustainability is cool. If sustainability is a trend, it's simple like this. It's simple like this. Make sustainability cool. Make sustainability beautiful. Make sustainability poetic, and not just sustainability by doing something sustainable and blah blah blah. But it's like make it sexy. Make it sexy. We see talking again about automotive. By the way, Abdul, I lived in Torino. I love the city. I miss the city. It's amazing. And
it's a really nice city, yes.
it's amazing. It's amazing. And as I see, we have a lot of friends that are from the automotive industry that works with Porsche and Jaguar and a lot of cool brands. And while we see, it's just an example. It's in the automotive industry, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they are taking a lot of sustainable solutions, such as electric cars, different finishes, but to make a car look cooler and be faster. And this is amazing. It's not only sustainability by doing something sustainable and let's try to sell this because it's sustainable, but make
yes, I mean, this is the
sexy,
thing, like
yeah?
Sustainability is not going to sell you something, to sell
Exactly.
something, even in
Exactly.
architecture, because it is really sometimes sustainability means using new materials, but it is really hard to convince a client to use a new material because for him, it is like you are trying or testing the material with his money, you know, because at the end, architecture is an investment and it is really tough. So I was like saying more green areas because I mean, I think this is the first step and it is easier to convince a client today, like to go sustainable, even like putting an internal gardens. This is easier than telling him, okay, let's try to build with a new composite material, which is really sustainable, which doesn't require like cement, doesn't require concrete. But then he will like go silent for 10 seconds and then say, no, I prefer concrete, you know, because he will imagine immediately
I am wearing
concrete
the
will
client.
last 100 years. You know?
I'm wearing the client hat here, and I totally understand where you're coming from.
No, absolutely. Like everybody push on sustainability on all the aspects, make it sexy as what Rodrigo said. But it is hard to convince. This is the thing. Like we architects, if we want to make a house for our own, yes, we can use the composite materials because we know that it is strong, it's going to last. But how are you going to convince a client? And then you convince him and maybe his wife is going to say when he leave you, no, why you want to paste? I want concrete. Okay. So he will call you back and say, look, we cannot adopt that, you know.
Just
so
because
also
we're a group of
we
guys,
need to
we
be
can't.
realistic, you know.
I'm saying just because we're a group of guys, we can't be blaming the wives. Very quickly, Sushant and Ankur, do you have any comments on what you would like to see as being trendy? Very quickly.
Quickly, I just wanted to add to what I think Abdul and Rodrigo have been, and especially Rodrigo. Abdul, you started this whole thing of, you know, how do you bring in prefab, and we've been doing a lot of experiments with, because I think for us the new trend or the new way of looking at architecture is the way we build. You know, like I mean, popularly it's said the sustainable building itself is not sustainable, right? So I mean, we've been experimenting with how do you construct in our hills, and the whole act of hill constructing and what the, you know, what it does, what impact it leaves in terms of a footprint, and how do you look at that holistically, and how do you look at a transportable architecture but still be contextual. So we're experimenting with prefab and local materials and, you know, like infills and a whole bunch of challenges what you spoke about. So yeah, that's what's exciting, and I think that is what we are looking forward to. Yeah.
Super. Thanks, Ankur. Sushant, you have a comment?
Yeah, so I think a lot of things, what I wanted to say, have already been covered by the other panelists. So I'm not going to reiterate on that. But it's very hard to, I mean, it's a very good question that what do you want to see trending, you know, because it's very hard to predict, like, why would you want a certain thing to be trending? But I really hope and wish that more conversations about design technologies, and not just technologies that we use, let's say, as appliances, but technologies which allow us to design much more better and smartly. more discussions on that, more thought on that, more people getting more conscious about how creatively and innovatively you're trying to use technologies is something I really hope becomes more trending. And to be honest, I've seen things trending as well in this regard, because the profession has been changing, the academia has been changing, people have been trying to use new design technologies. And I just hope the focus shifts more on design technologies as well, apart from the smart technologies that we're using as appliances, because that's also going to lead to sustainability in one manner.
I agree, and in Rodrigo's wise words, you got to make it sexy. I think that's the point. My hypothesis that we began this conversation seems to be somewhat true. That whether it is you're looking at the past, whether it's revival, whether it's to bring the artisan, it's about inclusivity, connecting, it's about storytelling, or using cutting edge technology to move with the times, or thinking about a sustainable future. I think these are ways of thinking that architects, rightly so, and when I say this, I think all of you across the board resonate with all of these values, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And
If you give me just one
yeah.
line, yes. Just I want just to mention a small example that just came to my mind. Let's take Tesla as an example. The Model
Perfect.
S. It is an electric car, but it looks like a normal car because otherwise they are not able to sell it.
Right.
Why you need the hood, this long hood, if there is no engine there, So the shape of the car, they didn't get affected by the technology because they want to sell. Because sustainability alone, it's so hard to sell with it. So I don't know. I think we need to make our dreams a little bit dreams of expectations from the others, because at the end, architecture is about the others. I think I keep it somehow in the medium level. If the client accept to use a little bit of wood and a small green spaces inside, for me, for as of today, I think it's fine, And then
Great.
later we see how things are going to evolve.
Super. So we're gonna end there, and these are the trendsetters. And please hear what they're saying, and hopefully they will make it sexy enough for all of you for these things to trend, and hopefully we'll do the right thing. So thank you,
Thank you
gentlemen.
really so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the efforts. It's a great opportunity to meet all of these nice guys, Thank you really so much.
And stay safe wherever you are, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, everybody. Thank you so much.
Over to you, Supreet.
Thank you, Anubhav. And thank you, all the panelists. This is what I call energy when you see a panel discussion. Too many things to hear, too interesting, and yet we could not miss a heartbeat here. Very
Thank
well
you.
done.
Namaste.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you so much.
Let's make sexiness a trend. This will be amazing.
Okay.
Pleasure, guys. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you for joining Design Dekko Musings. Moving on, while we ended our first panel discussion on really high, we are going to take it to the next session as well. We are going to have our second power panel next, which is on the cocoon effect. The whole reason why we put up this subject was this trend emerged during the time of pandemic. We were looking at homes where people had essentially become very, very careful about security. We were speaking before that about the trend of connected homes, but home security was hardly on the priority list. Some years back, I read it somewhere that in India, over 60% of security decisions were made by third parties, which are builders, contractors, architects, designers. But even then, in the design briefs, security never usually made the cut, until unless it's a huge project. Why is that? Despite the rising crime in India, security is not a priority. The only difference that happened during the pandemic was health security and home security, the line between the two blurred. Now, the responsibility of securing one's place has taken an inside-out approach, which means people are taking onus of security and then expecting other partners to pitch in. But are designers considering security as an essential part of the design brief? Is there a change, or at least a foreseeable one? This is what we are going to discuss in the second session, the cocoon effect. The session is powered by Godrej Security Solution and India Circus. To moderate the panel, let me please invite the session chair, Tanya Khanna, founder, Epistle Communication. It's a well-known marketing communication firm which is focused on architecture and design industry. Through her role at Epistle, she has laid the foundation of what is one of a kind agency in India, facilitating good design, bringing it forth on global platform, and more recently, she has been advocating reading architecture as part of a lifelong investigation that she continues to explore in her current role as the Director of Epistle Communication. Welcome, Tanya.
Thanks, Supreet. How are you? Nice to
I
see
am
you.
absolutely fine.
Hi.
And
Thank
from
you.
here on, I'm going to give the stage to you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Supreet. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. And it's a really interesting topic because, you know, it really got me thinking as well as to we are actually, inhabiting a little cocoon by itself. While the world has started to open up, a lot of us are fearful, worried. I know the next time somebody asks me for a meeting, I'm thinking, am I feeling that secure about stepping out? But in the same context, like Supreet was mentioning earlier, there is also security at home that we have all started to think about, something we never thought about earlier. You know, our comfort levels have changed. Our comfort levels have not evolved, but they have just completely transformed. And so it's an interesting topic to be discussing today. And I'm very happy to announce the other panelists with me. I'll first invite Meher Nosh Pithawala, Vice President, Godrej Security Solutions. Thanks, Meher Nosh, for being here with us today. I'll also invite Mitali Aharam, founder at Crafted Spaces. Crafted Spaces was founded in October 2014. It's a design firm led by Mitali that has managed to execute, design, and hand over more than 50 projects in the hospitality, commercial, and residential segments. Thank you for being here with us, Mitali. We also have with us Payal Karumbia, who's the founder at the Baby Atelier that makes everything fun, eco-friendly, organic, and on trend to do with design for kids and for kids spaces. So everything between the age group of 0 to 18 years is what the Baby Atelier does. Thank you, Payal, for being here with us today. So I hope you all can see me. I cannot see you. Hi. Thank you all. And just before I start with the panel, like I was saying earlier, the boundaries have blurred between the workspace and the home. And, you know, post COVID-19, our cocoon, you know, which is the home, has become a safe haven. You know, analogous to the caterpillar, you know, our lives have also undergone this huge metamorphosis and over the last few months. And this cocoon and its form and its security is of utmost importance today, you know. So most of us, including myself, and especially the elderly, the young ones, have also imbibed a fear, you know, a new fear of things that could go wrong. And security at home, therefore, has suddenly become a very relevant and pertinent issue today. So, you know, when I was thinking about this panel, we were wondering what is it that we can do as architects, as designers, as people who care about the built environment to retain that feeling of security that the cocoon provides for us. You know, this is our home. And that is what I think this conversation could interrogate today. So my first question would be to Meher Nosh. there's no denial that the crime rate has increased over the last few years. And in fact, statistics show that post-COVID, as a result of various other factors, crime rates are increasing. There's a lot of home robberies and people don't have jobs, and they're trying the drive to make money through activities that are not secure is going crazy, and it's becoming a little out of hand. Yet home security does not feature amongst the priority of customers, or it did not until now. So why do you think that is?
Well, Tanya, this is a question that a lot of people ask me. I have a one-word answer to that, and that answer is karma, which is very, very Indian. So even before COVID, there are a lot of people who said that if it has to happen, it's going to happen. I've never sinned in my life, so God's not going to punish me. So bad things are not going to happen to me. Bad things are going to happen to people, who've done bad things. Post-COVID, it has changed slightly, but people are actually coming back to what they were before. So we are seeing the decline in the fear that was there earlier with respect to security and the want for security devices. Even right now, if you were to look outside, the people wearing masks or the people who are worried about COVID has significantly reduced. Yes. And to a large extent, it's because that jo hona wo hoke rahega. If it has to happen, it's going to happen. No one is going to stop it. So that is one of the biggest mentalities that we in India have. Though I must say that post-COVID, the difference between security and health security has diffused quite a bit. People are now looking at security not just as a device which is going to stop crime, but also as a device which is going to help them in being connected with others, help them in answering their doorbell even without going to the door, help them to be in touch with their parents or their children even if they are not staying at home, even if they are working from home, ensuring that the person at the door, or for that matter, the children in the other room do not disturb them. So these are things that have changed. We've launched a product which is called as a UV case, which is essentially used to disinfect all the objects that come into your house. So we saw an increase in demand on the same, but I must say that, that enthusiasm which was there earlier has started declining. And to a large extent, I believe that it is again got to do with the mindset of a lot of people that it's not my responsibility. A lot of people go back and say that security is not my responsibility. It's the responsibility of the guard there. It's the responsibility of the society in charge. It's the responsibility of the police. It's the responsibility of the government. I'm there and I need to be protected by all of them. And when it comes to getting into a new building, it's the responsibility of the builder for that matter. So this needs to change, and it needs to fundamentally change. We are seeing a certain level of change happening. The change isn't very rapid. Like for instance, we are seeing a proliferation of people asking for cameras, Wi-Fi cameras, which are connected. We are looking at people asking for video door phones, wherein remotely they can answer the doorbell even without going to the door. We are looking at people, who are now buying UV cases to sanitize their daily objects that come into their house. So we are seeing that change, but it's not happening that rapidly. It's perhaps that people don't plan for security when they are moving into the house. They plan for everything else. They plan for the interiors. They plan for the furniture. They plan for the accessories, etc., but security is always taken a back seat.
That's a very good point that you made, and I'm actually going to ask Mithali to comment on that. Mithali, you've been working in the residential segment and you've done multiple projects. In your experience, why do you think this is the case?
I think very aptly, like Menino said, we have this very typical Indian mentality that, nothing is going to happen to us. And unless it happens to a known person or a neighbor or somebody like that, it does not make you think that something can go drastically wrong with you. And like you mentioned, because of the pandemic now, I think these lines are blurring between health and security of your home, which is great in a way because people are really thinking about it now, which they didn't do earlier. Like projects we did 2 years ago, security was honestly the last thing we discussed in a project. And as a designer also, I am very guilty of that because you're always bothered about your big windows and your entrances being grand, and you don't want those grills to show, you don't want the security camera popping in your view. So I think we're all guilty of that, but I'm glad that we're all taking a step towards making it more feasible for the homeowner. And Yeah.
Okay, so we've also I don't know, like you said, it's something that people did not think about earlier. But do you now see the end user, the customer, sort of taking the initiative? And in this period, like Mehnosh also said, there was this one time when people did start talking about it. Do you see that continuing, and do you think that will last? Because they've taken charge of security, right?
Definitely. I think now, earlier on, connected homes were more about automation, and people just wanted their lights and everything to be linked, and it was more about that kind of thing. But people always put security in the backseat. But I think now people are incorporating it, and we as designers need to incorporate it in the beginning of our design because it's part of our electricals. When your conduiting happens on site, you have to make sure all these things are accounted for in the beginning because adding it later on is going to be a big hassle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a complete nightmare. Thank you, Mitali. So, Payal, my next question to you would be, as somebody who specializes in dealing with children's spaces, right? Where do you think the shift has been? I'm sure you have seen a shift, pre-COVID and post-COVID, and how people approach security when it comes to children's spaces and their homes at large. What is your view on that?
Interesting thing is that maybe 3-4 years ago we started seeing a huge increase in the amount of security people wanted in their kids' spaces. So we're seeing a lot of people put in remote cameras. They wanted to have access to their kids when they stepped out, and even if they had a lot of help, previous to that they were depending a lot on the in-house help. But then when we started hearing and getting hearing more and more stories of break-ins at home, we started seeing people even watching their help 24/7, and their help would even know about it. So when this whole COVID pandemic started, we noticed people stopped asking as much for the security in their kids' rooms, and we had to explain to them that this is obviously not going to continue forever. You're going to have to step out at some point. So, when you're getting your kids' rooms ready, include that in the planning, like Mitali said. So, that's the kind of shift we've seen. It's kind of been opposite.
Right. And do you think people are receptive to that, the notion of security within kids? Because I assume the common notion is that, okay, I'm home right now, right? So it doesn't matter. But the act of setting up the home is not going to happen again. So do you see people being more open to that?
Actually, no. It's interesting because earlier I didn't have that much of, that hard a time convincing people of the importance. And in fact, I would tell them, you don't need so many cameras, in your home. You don't need them, and your kids lose. You don't need them, your kid needs privacy as well. And there should be a better way to monitor this. But now, just convincing them to have that one camera is hard.
Right. But isn't it a lot more than just the camera? Mitali, what would you like to say? And Mehnosh, I would like you also to add to that. One is the security with the sense, okay, I know what is happening. But there is a whole new dimension to security that I would like you to comment on once Mitali shares her inputs.
Sure.
Yeah, I think now security, you're connecting your devices, and now internet is so easily available to people now. So I think people are more open to the idea of that now. It's not just about home security, like I mentioned earlier. It's about the whole concept of having a connected home, which doesn't involve just security. You can take care of your health, you can take care of your devices, you can create a sustainable solution for your home by monitoring your appliances. So I think it's a culmination of all that. And another thing that is a little worrisome when it comes to all this is also you have everything on the internet now, and you have everything connected to your phone. So what about cybersecurity? So you always have these kind of thoughts running at the back of your head. So you can only try and be a little smart about it. You can have it in your common areas and, your wet kitchens and things like that, or exit entry points. But somehow when it comes to the bedroom, I think taking safer options, like having your blinking lights, or, your curtains open up if there's an intruder or something like that, there should be a little bit of a line that should be drawn in terms of security. You shouldn't go all out. You should be a little smart about it. Also, in terms of how your house is planned, say your boundary wall at the back is slightly lower or something like that, depending on your site conditions, you should, tune your security requirements to that and just not blindly follow norms, I think. Be a little smart about it, because cybersecurity, I mean, things are improving, developments are happening, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't let your privacy out to the world also.
That's a very fair point. So yeah, Mehernosh, what do you think about this, visual privacy versus everything else in security?
So I think Mitali has made some very, very important points. And I want to address the point that she made earlier with respect to, ensuring that the houses are designed in such a way that a security equipment can fit in. And a lot of times people don't install video door phones because the wire is going to be seen. And where a provision for the wiring from the indoor to the outdoor is not done. So people just don't install the video door phone because, it would mean that the wire is going to be visible outside, and, so they don't want it. So they kind of compromise on a very, very important security device like a video door phone, wherein you can see who's outside without even going to the door, just for the aesthetics. So had that provision been made, a video door phone could have been fitted, but that is because the interior decorator or the architect did not do that. The second important point that Mitali brought about, which is very, very interesting, is data privacy. So there was a news article sometime back that there was one person who had bought a CCTV camera from one of our friendly neighbors. Okay, and the output that he saw on his mobile phone was of someone else's house. Now this is bizarre. This is a complete breach of security, because he actually saw the output on his mobile phone of someone else's house. Imagine that thing happening to you. So there are lots of cameras right now which are smarter. Okay, there are cameras which are made in India where the entire storage is in India itself. It does not go to our friendly neighborhood country. It stays here. There is security which is built in, but still people to a large extent choose security devices basis the cost. And that is something that we have been trying to educate our consumers as well. They look online and they probably buy the cheapest camera which is available. But they don't understand that the cheapest camera available is also going to come with a lot of problems, including privacy. And data privacy is going to be very important. Imagine the image of your house going to some other country or someone else for that matter. Now, these are things that one need to be careful about. And that is something that we keep on educating our consumers, because our products, the servers in India, the security is 100% safe. And we ensure that the data stays in India, it does not go outside and is only viewed, because it's encrypted, by the person who's using the CCTV camera. Plus the CCTV cameras now, the Wi-Fi cameras have become smarter. So connected devices, we don't really need wires with respect to the Wi-Fi cameras that are there. And they could be programmed in such a way that if you need privacy, they could be switched off or switched on. So you can actually program that, and it can be switched off at a particular point of time or switched on at a particular point of time. Or if you don't want the entire thing to be recorded, you could actually do it in such a way that it will only record once there is movement. There is a lot of artificial intelligence which is being built in. So, if a baby cries, for that matter, the CCTV camera will call out to you that your baby is crying. Or if there is a fall of someone elderly in your family, it will immediately send you a trigger saying that, someone has fallen. If you want the camera to be switched off, all you need to do is wave to it and it will get switched off. So these sort of artificial intelligence are something that we are building into cameras, and they're coming in. Of course, they come at a price. They are not as cheap as some of our friendly neighborhood countries sell their cameras. So there is a lot of artificial intelligence which is being built in. I think the problem is about education and ensuring that the customer just does not go on the lowest price possible, but chooses a CCTV camera smartly. As far as privacy is concerned, it can be taken care of, provided he finds the right solution.
I think that's a very valid point actually that you made, which is that people are not talking about it, right? It's something that it's never, when designers also talk to each other, or consumers and designers talk to each other, they don't talk about security. And hence there is a lack of knowledge per se on the field. So in the absence of that knowledge, what does a consumer do? They pick up the cheapest option because they don't know any better as well. So I think in that sense, obviously the theme for the panel today is very well placed. And thank you, Supreet, for, planning this conversation out, because at least we are all talking about it, and then more people will talk about this. And, this information sort of needs to move out of, our little cocoons as designers also. I would ask you, Mehernosh, actually, that so we've all established that security is an essential part actually of the design brief to begin with. Once designers start to educate clients and they at least say that, okay, this is something that one needs to consider, then obviously we are at least on the right track. What do you think are the 2 or 3 things that one should consider when they're looking at the security of one's home?
Okay, so there's one more aspect which I want to cover, Tanya, before I actually go and answer this particular question. There is another strange belief that people have, is that if they were to install these security devices, it would bring attention to the people who it should not bring attention to.
That's a big myth. I agree.
Now that's a big myth. It's a very, very big myth. And I've got neighbors here, and I told them that, you need a video door phone or a CCTV camera. They said, why do I need it? I don't really need it. The immediate reaction was an extremely defensive one, that I don't have anything in the house to protect. So why do I need it? So that is something that needs to go. People need to understand that, these are smart devices. Like a mobile phone is something which you can't do without. Very soon, security devices are things which you will not be able to do without, because, they're connected devices. But it's taking a lot of time for consumers to actually accept that. I think it is really important. Yeah.
Completely agree. I mean, actually, I am probably one of those converted. I was one of those customers earlier who did not have, until one day when something happened at our house is when we realized that, okay, no, we need to do this. And with elderly at home, with young people, with young kids at home, it is more and more, relevant that you need to start thinking about this.
Absolutely. So very rightly mentioned that, when there is something that happens to you or your neighborhood, you start thinking about it. But even then, the time which is spent behind the incident that has happened and the final purchase is quite long. So there is a lot of contemplation. There is a lot of thinking that goes behind whether I need it or not, etc. And to a large extent, it's also because of awareness. And I think the designers, the interior decorators should have security as a part of their integral part of their design itself. So for instance, if the person is installing a door and is installing locks, he should ask the customer whether he should make provision for a video door phone or not. Or if he's doing up the house, there are possibilities of installing Wi-Fi CCTV cameras that need no wiring. All it needs is a power connection. And therefore ensuring that the power connection is relevant. You'd be surprised, Tanya, there are so many people who do not install a CCTV camera or a video door phone because the wires are seen. And you can't conceal it after the flat is made. And he's saying, if the wires are seen, I'm not going to be doing it. And then we say that you're compromising on the security. So be it. So aesthetics still plays a role which is much higher than security. And that is something that we're trying to change. And that is where we would really need help from the architects and the interior decorators also. Builders, for that matter, there are a lot of builders who are still compromising on security. There are people who are buying tons of products from the friendly neighborhood, and then they are installing it and they never work. A lot of CCTV cameras, for that matter, which are there on the roads, they don't work. And we have seen those instances. So they need management. They need to be of a proper quality. They need to be coming with a particular certification. They need to have a proper service. There needs to be an annual maintenance contract. Like you always do it with your water purifier. Same thing you need to do with your security services as well. You need to ensure that they are working on a regular basis.
So, okay, so going back to the question, this is a common question. Before I carry on with the last 2 questions, if there are any questions from the audience, please drop in your messages. We have a Q&A box. We'll be addressing them at the end of the session. We have about 10 more minutes to go. So, Mehernosh, obviously you clearly said that security needs to be an essential part of the design brief, and there are multiple factors that one needs to consider when you're looking at the security of one's home. Mitali, what about you? What do you think are those 2 or 3 factors according to you?
So I think I will talk more specifically about Hyderabad. Most of the houses here are in gated communities. So like Mehernosh mentioned, the builders already provide like a 2 or 3 tier security. So when we are involved, what we have to do is add that additional security to the individual villas. So like, active and passive security. So it kind of becomes a combination of both. But then when we're doing standalone independent villas, then that is when we are actually more involved in terms of security. I think we slack a little bit when houses are in gated communities because you kind of know that it's already been taken care of. But when you are responsible, you are the architect, you are the designer, and there is no builder involved, there is so much more responsibility on your head then, and that is when we pull our socks up and we are involved from the beginning. So it kind of also depends on what kind of situation you're in, what kind of design you're doing for the client. So there are a lot of factors to take into consideration. But yeah, also when we do farmhouses, that's a whole different ballgame. That's when you throw in all your extra punches and, So it depends from site to site, client to client.
Okay. And Payal, what would you like to say? What are the 2 or 3 things that one must consider, when it comes to security at home?
Interesting things that people really don't talk about here in India. Of course, we talk about the video and the sound and everything. What about fire security, right? Nobody says a word about that, and that's one of the things I always insist on in a child's room. Have smoke detectors. It's such an important thing, and it's not a very expensive investment to be making, and people are very receptive to that. If you go, as you all know, if you go anywhere, out of our country, everybody has a smoke detector. I mean, they have it in our hotel rooms and, our common spaces, but we don't have it in our own homes. Kitchens are without smoke, alarms. So I think that's one of the things that we really need to kind of focus and talk about and kind of invest in.
Yeah. Okay, very, very interesting, Payal. So last question to you before we actually take on questions from the audience is, do you think that there is a larger change in the way health security, home security, fire security, all of this is being perceived? Do you think there is a larger change, and will there be a foreseeable change in the way people will start perceiving it?
I think with education and getting more exposure to all of this, of course, people will. Everybody at the end of the day wants to be safe, and people are understanding how important it is. I think more and grasping the kind of environment.
And Mitali, what about you? What do you think? That is there a larger change?
Definitely. I think people now are more aware, designers are more aware, and they are working in relation with the consultants. They are the people who have the knowledge, and we should definitely listen to them and incorporate whatever they say in our designs from the initial stage, not like add-ons like we have been doing. And I think clients are pushing for it and asking for it, because everybody inevitably nowadays knows somebody who's had a bad experience, and they don't want that to happen to them or their family. Like you said, it's happened to you. So, I think with the world we're living in right now, it's very important. And security is becoming safer. There's so much advancement. Every year, there's some new technology that comes up that, clears up all the flaws that have been there earlier. So I think we should keep ourselves updated. And also, once you've done something for your home, keep up with the trends. Call your consultants back, call your designers back. Tell them that, is there something that I can do to improve my home security? And I think it's definitely going to stay, and we should all definitely try and do as much as we can. Yeah.
And Mehrnosh, I know you said that it's pretty dismal right now, and most people have not considered it. But do you anticipate that there is a foreseeable change in the way people perceive security? I mean, I'd just like to add one more. I think people also need to talk about their experiences. People shy away from talking about the fact that they've had a bad experience, maybe, because they think that everybody will judge them. And like you spoke about karma, this is also, people think that, oh, that means you were not careful enough. It has nothing to do with that. And the minute you share, that will encourage the other person to recognize the problem at least.
Yeah, so I'll answer both the questions. I think the category awareness is definitely increased. However, which product to buy and what are the things that you need to look at before buying a security device is something that needs to further increase. And this is the job that we have to do in terms of educating customers on, ensuring that the right tick marks are in place. The other point about talking about the bad things that have happened, I think there is also opportunity to talk about the good things. So there are so many customers who came up to me and said that my mother was ailing or my father was ailing, and thanks to the CCTV camera, I could actually be in touch with him. I could speak to him. I could hear what is happening. I could ensure that I'm being in touch with him or her even without being physically present. I've heard stories where, there are people in US and they've asked CCTV cameras to be installed in their houses, where their parents stay, and they have been in touch with them, virtually. So these are heartening facts, and these are things that, add a positive touch to security.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. I'll now take some questions from the audience. The first one is, what are the different types? This is from Aziz Amin. What are the different types of security measures that come into play for kids, from toddlers to teenagers? And, what all should one consider, especially when designing kid spaces? I've actually taken 2 questions. So I'd like everybody actually to respond to this. Payal, why don't you start, please? You are the expert on kid spaces anyways.
Not about security though, right? So I was one of the, like I said, for me, the biggest thing I look at is kind of controlling the number of cameras and exposure in a child's room, because I do think there is something like too much of it. That's one of the things. And the second thing is biosecurity. I'm absolutely insistent on it. And also the access to windows in your child's room, right? How people can get in and out your locking systems. Is it too easy for your child to open the door? Is it too difficult for them to, after a certain age, like a teenager needs to get out of the room? How do you, have you taught them after a certain age how they can, get themselves out of a room if they need to? Those are the kind of conversations we try to have with parents when it comes to security. It's not just about the appliances that we put in place, but the accessories that we have in the room. Do they know how to use them in the right way to be safe? Besides that, I would say, because we're an organic firm, we talk a lot about the security of the air that you breathe. So we try to have, a lead-free paint and fume-free product in there. That is really, an important kind of aspect in a child's room that people don't really pay much attention to still.
Right. Mitali, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think like Payal said, that we do have plans and we do have all these devices set in, but what if they fail? Like, what if you get locked up in your own room or your own bathroom or whatever it is? Everybody needs to know a backup plan, and especially when it comes to kids. Of course, seeing cameras around is intimidating, so yes, try and avoid that. Think of other measures that can be involved, and also teach them and educate them about the backup plan. If you do get stuck, if a situation does happen, what is your exit plan,
Right. And thank you. And Mehernosh, what about you? Kids
Yeah, I
spaces.
agree with the panelists. So there are 2 points that I would want to make. Ensure that you have a camera, but it is not in your face. Ensure that, it is, the kid can't have access to it, and use it, when you have to. And ensure that, it also comes with artificial intelligence. Like, for instance, if the kid is crying, that is the time when you need an alert, and you get an alert and you find out what is happening. So those are the things that one need to take care of. And please ensure that your data is secure enough. So that is something which is very, very important, because data going outside with your kid inside, and specifically the bedroom, is something that you definitely don't want to happen. So ensure data security is there. And the second thing, of course, is that is more relevant during COVID right now, that there are a lot of surfaces that come into the house. And exposure to surfaces, because kids tend to touch a lot of surfaces that come inside, could lead to COVID. So there are products which are available which kind of sanitize those objects also which are coming into the house. Try and start using them, because that would make sure that the surfaces are actually disinfected from viruses and bacteria.
Okay. Thank you very much, panelists. This was really, really insightful. I'd just like to sum up, I think, bringing out the 4 or 5 key points that you all mentioned. One is the fact that security is a very important part of the design brief. So we all need to sort of start from there, and then educate our clients, peers, the community at large. educating, talking about it, having a larger conversation on security and the different types of security, air security, like you mentioned, fire security, data security. All of this needs to be talked about. So we are, as I think the onus is on all of us as architects and designers, that we all talk about security as much, and also as end users. And thirdly, last but not the least, is have enough information on products before you go ahead and take the plunge. Before you go ahead and buy the cheapest option or the most easily accessible option. It's okay to wait for 2 more days, but order the right product. And so I think that sort of covers up, and hopefully we all can have safer, more secure cocoons that we inhabit. Thank you all for really sharing all your knowledge and expertise on this subject. Supreet, this was absolutely fabulous. And I thank you for bringing the subject up. I think it's absolutely pertinent. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya, for moderating it so fantastically. And thank you to all panelists as well. So yesterday, when I was ending the session, I made a point. When we look back, what kind of ancestors will we be known as? Today, we spoke about we need to be a little bit more responsible. Perhaps we need to do those little things that we often do, and those which we don't do, but we must do. Thank you all of you for joining us. With that, we conclude the first digital conclave of Design Dekko Musings. This is powered by Godrej Group companies, including Godrej Construction, Interior, Godrej Locks and Architecture Fittings and Systems, Godrej Security Solutions, The Trees, India Circus, Godrej Properties, Script, and U&Us Home Design Studio. We would like to thank our associate partners, Designers Priel, Established Design Communication, Epistle Communication, and the Information Company, and a special thanks to the team of Design Dekko, which curated and hosted these 2 days for all of us. Last but not least, thank you, all of you who made time and joined us for these intelligent and engaging sessions. That's up from us. Do write in to us and follow us on social media for regular updates on events and other interesting happenings in the world of design and architecture. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Signing off.
We are Godrej. That's us in ruby, green, and blue. And this is a story of the little things we do. It started with a little thing we made to protect you and your things. Over 100 years on, we're still doing the same, except it now has wings.
Lift off.
Little things that will take you places you can't get to on an airplane. And little things that circle the earth and tell our farmers when it'll rain. Little things that keep our animal friends hale and hearty. And little things that keep kids healthy and naughty. Little things that keep not just our homes, but even medicines and vaccines cool. And little things that rinse away dirt and allergens, so your little ones don't miss a day of school. Little things that make washing hands so much fun. And some that make your cars and homes smell like spring. Little things that keep diseases away. And some that make your hair shine and swing. Little things that help you make things, big, small, and everything in between. And little things that help carry those things to places far and even unseen. Little things, or should we say little spaces, where you live, work, and play. And little things you keep in those spaces to sit, sleep, or just put things away. Locks, soaps, buildings and missiles. Well, there are quite a few. These are some of the little things we do.